Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread with Rivaaj Maharaj, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I want to talk about the breaking news coming out of the United States of America regarding the Supreme Court's decision on Donald Trump's imposition of tariffs in the so-called trade war. So without further ado, let's get into it. The United States Supreme Court has just issued its ruling or its verdict on Donald Trump's imposition of tariffs. I've got an article here from the BBC that I'm just going to read through for you to understand what exactly has happened. With a 6-3 majority, the Supreme Court ruled Trump exceeded his authority when he imposed tariffs via a law reserved for national emergencies. They say he needs congressional approval to impose taxes on imports. So basically, what this verdict has stated is that Donald Trump had no right to impose those tariffs and use them in the manner in which he did. He needed congressional approval first. So Donald Trump was meant to have put his request for the implementation of these tariffs before Congress. A vote would have been taken, and if the vote was in favor of those tariffs being imposed, then certainly he could have went ahead and implemented his tariff plan. However, he unilaterally decided that tariffs was the way to go, and he began implementing it almost immediately.
Let me just tell you, the US Supreme Court has ruled against Donald Trump's global tariffs enacted back in April under federal law meant for national emergencies. These are the pictures live from the Supreme Court. We've been expecting that ruling for a number of weeks and it's been held back and held back. It has just emerged and it is significant because Donald Trump has lost, and of course you will remember that tariffs have been his go-to policy, his weapon he has used so many times. It started, you will remember, back in April, what he described as Liberation Day, when he announced the whole sweeping range of tariffs for all sorts of countries with a basic baseline of 10%. You'll remember the pictures from the Rose Garden in the White House where Donald Trump was there with his blackboard and a variety of figures for different countries in terms of the tariffs announced. And one remembers at the time a baseline of 10%. Then over the days it became clear, the European Union, for example, 20%, Japan 24%, India 26%. The United Kingdom at that stage 10%, but some of the highest tariffs, Cambodia, that was 49%, and other countries where it just was significantly higher. China, of course, the central focus for Donald Trump. At different stages, that ratcheted up to over 100% as you had tariffs and then counter tariffs announced by Beijing that continued to ratchet up until it was cooled down. These are the pictures, you'll remember them from April, where the president had the list of countries and went through them now.
So the Supreme Court has now said that in terms of the legalities of it, his administration had no authority to go and unilaterally impose those tariffs without first seeking the approval of the United States Congress. Now, while it may seem like a huge blow to the Trump administration, I know that initially markets around the world are reacting positively to this news. There are quite a few ramifications that come from this. So one of the more common questions being asked is, those companies that imported goods into the United States that from countries that were faced with these tariffs, how do they now move forward? And the burning question here is, what do they do in terms of funds they've already outlaid and used because this tariff policy was implemented? Do they now have a recourse to go to the United States administration and claim back some of that money or all of that money that they had spent? Because now it's basically because this ruling basically says that he did not have the authority to do that. So that means that those funds were then illegally taken from these companies. The other thing to bear in mind is that Donald Trump is a businessman. He's already moving 5-10 steps ahead of this ruling. So I suspect that when he made the concise decision that he was going to go ahead with these tariffs, he already asked those in his administration for their feedback. Now, he would have got a lot of yays and nays, and I think he knew he wanted to implement these tariffs, and that was the way he was going to go. What I think would have been told to him was that he needed congressional approval. However, he could go in and implement it and just see where it went from there. Now, having had that discussion, he would have probably realized that it would at some point be challenged. And if the verdict was against his decision, then what could he then do, or what recourse could he have? So I believe they already have plans in place to continue with this tariff imposition in a different way. I don't believe that he's just going to sit back and take this lying down, because Donald Trump, remember, is not somebody that likes to be told what to do. He believes that he is the commander-in-chief and whatever he says goes. So it's going to take a bit of time. Apparently, the ruling's quite a lengthy review that needs to be looked at, and I suspect in the next few hours and days, more information will filter out regarding the recourse these companies have to the United States. Bear in mind, there are other countries that have already locked in trade deals with the United States, and a lot of these trade deals were based on this tariff structure. So what happens to those deals? We know that the Indian government locked in a deal in principle. However, it was to be finalized in March, and I suspect that they knew that they'll play for time because this ruling was going to come out, and nobody was 100% certain as to the way in which this ruling would go. So I think you're going to have a lot of renegotiations of contracts. You're going to have the Trump administration finding loopholes and ways in which to implement these tariffs in different forms. So we're going to keep an eye on these developments, and we'll keep you posted in due course. I want to thank you for spending time with us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, as it helps us with the algorithm and it helps our channel to grow.